One at a time. It's going to work and then. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Alhamdulillah, as-salatu was-salamu ala Rasulillah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. Dear brothers and sisters, we are in a war since March 11, 2020, when the pandemic was declared. We are fighting an invisible enemy which travels through the air, and we breathe the air about 16 times a minute, 23,000 times a day. This enemy is so small, you need an electron microscope to see it. It killed 3.3 million human beings, destroyed families, created hundreds of thousands of widows and orphans, destroyed businesses. Hajj was denied, masjid were closed, cities and countries was in lockdown situation. We're fighting this enemy together. No one is spared. Willingly or unwillingly, we all are soldiers in this fight. Now we have weapons to fight this effectively and decisively. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave this gift to fight this and win this war. This is the vaccine. This will prevent the virus to come and attack you and being replicated inside of you and spread to the other human being. We take pride in this vaccine as well. As you know, this was also developed by two Muslim scientists. They're Turkish-German in origin. They contributed a significant portion to develop this vaccine. Interesting timeline, the first case of COVID-19 was declared in December 2019. First COVID vaccine was given in December 2020. This is a historical achievement in medical community. No vaccine was created within a year and given to the human being. So far, we have 1.4 billion doses of vaccine given globally. 270 million doses of vaccine was given in the US. We have almost 36.2% US population who are eligible for the vaccine already been vaccinated. US is the global leader of vaccinating the people, and we really need to get it done. Very soon, most of the US population will be vaccinated. There will be carrot and stick, believe me. So do not delay, get vaccinated. I can give an example. In Haram, if you want to go and pray in Haram in Mecca and Medina, you need to have a vaccine card. If you want to go for Hajj, you're going to need a vaccine card. So time is coming, it's widely available. You can just walk in and get it. But inshallah, we're going to address those legitimate concerns and questions in this program. So if you have any question, we're going to address that. And inshallah, we're going to fight this global war together. First, I would like to invite Brother Jamal to talk about the Sharia aspect of this vaccine, inshallah.
Bismillah, alhamdulillah, wa salatu wa salam ala Rasulillah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. I just want to clarify or to share with you the ahadith of the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam that taking the means, taking this medication will not contradict with relying on Allah, with the tawakkul on Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So many ahadith to show us this. For example, ahadith, this is in Sahih Muslim, Jabir ibn Abdullah, one of the Sahaba, narrated that the Prophet ﷺ said that every disease that Allah brought down to this earth, there is cure for it. And in another narration, then people might know the cure and might not know. But in Asaba, ad-dawa ad-da, then if this medication will block this disease, barrier that a person will be cured by the will of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Another incident, one of the Sahaba said that a group of Bedouin came to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam And they asked him, أنا تداوى, do we need to seek medication? He said, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, yes, you should. And then same thing, that لكل داء دواء, that to every disease there is a cure. Even one of the ulama, Ibn al-Qayyim, he compiled a whole book, and the book called At-Tabb al-Nabawi, the Prophet ﷺ medicine, and he did some talk about this hadith, and he said this is Arab, that they are Bedouin, they are not like knowing as if everything of life, of aspect of life, and they ask, should we take medication? And the Prophet ﷺ taught them, yes. Another that they said, oh Messenger of Allah, ara'ayta, that how about medication we take, or ruqya, dua and other, is this contradict the qadar of Allah, that we don't believe things in the hand of Allah? He said, this is from the qadar. This is from what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala prescribed, is to take the means. So the whole point is not I say that I'm mutawakkil ala Allah, I rely on Allah, and don't get scared, and don't do this. No, this is to take the mean. Even when a waft, like a delegate, came to give a pledge to the Prophet ﷺ to be a Muslim from Thaqif, and one of them has this disease, jarab, that can go to other. The Prophet ﷺ told him, قَدْ بَايَعْنَاكَ, do not come, I took your pledge. Do not come, because he might cause the other to get sick, and accept your pledge for Islam. Go back. And in the hadith he said, فِرْ مِنَ الْمَجْدُومِ فِرَارَكَ مِنَ الْأَسَدِ لَا عَدْوَى وَلَا طِيَرَ, that everything in the hand of Allah. How the disease started? In the hand of Allah. But then if the disease will go from one to one, it's by the will of Allah. However, for us, he said, فِرْ مِنَ الْمَجْدُومِ, as if run away from a person can be contagious, like the way that you run from the asad, from a lion, how you protect your life. So all these to tell us that part of the tawakkul is taking the means, not saying, no, I am mutawakkil on Allah, and so on. And we hear a lot of things these days, and this and social media and so on, and we as a Muslim, see, one of the ulama, Abdullah ibn al-Mubarak, said, لَوْلَا الْإِسْنَادِ, if there is no evidence on any talk, لَقَالَ مَنْ شَاءَ بِمَا شَاءَ, everyone can say whatever, but we have to have evidence. Even Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said in Quran, قُلْ هَاتُوا بُرْهَانَكُمْ, what's the proof on this? هَلْ مِنْ عِلْمٍ, do you have a knowledge of this? Prophet ﷺ said, كَفَى بِالْمَرْءِ إِثْمًا أن يحدث بكل ما سمع, that whatever we heard, oh, this is a poison, this is what caused that, and then we convey it to each other. This is enough of sin that can cause a person to be punished, because it could be a lie. We cannot just relate whatever without a proof. So the point here from the tawakkul on Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is to take the medication. La yurad, he said, sallallahu, a person who can cause sickness, he cannot come among the healthy people. Even one of the ulama, Ibn Taymiyyah, he said it's a form of fisq, like the worst sin. If a person can cause harm to other, he is sick or he is a carrier for sickness. I don't want to talk more, but they are the expert and they can answer, inshallah, your question and anything you have related to this topic. Wa sallallahu ala Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa sallam.
I will invite Dr. Qasim, who is an internist, to answer or actually explain the safety and efficacy of the COVID-19 vaccine.
So for the vaccines, I think we all know that now that the FDA has approved or has authorized about 3 different vaccines. The Pfizer vaccine, the Moderna vaccine, and the Johnson & Johnson vaccines. Those 3 vaccines are used in elderly, in adults has been authorized to be used in adults. So in talking about the safety and efficacy or the effectiveness of this vaccine, I just wanted to start by taking you through the process in which, before they can even authorize the vaccine at all, what are the steps that each of those vaccines will have gone through. So the study that will be done, usually they will start in animals. There will be a phase 1, phase 2, phase 3 studies. And all these levels, they are testing for the safety. So phase 1 is checking for safety. They are also checking whether the vaccine can actually do what they wanted it to do, that is, can stimulate the immune system. And then phase 2, they are looking at some sort of effectiveness. It doesn't even work at all. And then by phase 3, they are also looking for safety as well as effectiveness, but in a very large number of people. At this point, you have maybe tens of thousands of people. For the Moderna vaccine, I think they had about 47,000. The Pfizer had about 30,000. And all of these people were tested with this vaccine. They will group them into 2 and test them. So after it goes through all these steps, the next step will be for the FDA to look at the data. I think some of the concerns I've been speaking with some of the brothers is whether any other person apart from the company sees this data. They will submit the raw data to the FDA and they will look at those data. Apart from that, in the process of doing all these trials, there are also some people that are not part of the trial that will be looking at the data as well and be saying, okay, are we seeing anything that is unusual? At that point, if they see anything unusual, they can actually stop the trial and stop the vaccine from being used at all, if they see anything unusual. So that means that going through these 3 phases, they did not see anything unusual, and that's how they allow the vaccine to move ahead. It gets to the FDA, there is a body of people that are experts that are not related to the companies, the pharmaceutical companies at all, that are just career officer, government officer that will go through all this data to make sure that everything is intact before they will approve it. There is also a body that will recommend whether they should actually use it. There is another body of experts apart from the career officers. Then once the FDA now get all this data together, they say, okay, we are approved, we are giving authorization. So at this point, I should quickly talk about what is the difference between emergency use authorization and then FDA approval. So emergency use authorization, like the name, emergency. We are in the pandemic. At a point, there were more than almost 5,000 people being killed. They're dying from the virus itself. So there is an emergency situation. We need something to stop the problem that we're having. But it won't mean that they will not go through all the process, as in like they will not make sure that it is safe, it is effective. At that point, the main thing is that does the benefit outweigh the risk? Does the benefit of getting the vaccine outweigh the risk of dying from the virus? And that is pretty clear. 5,000 people, almost 5,000 people were dying every day from the virus. So when it gets to that point, the FDA will say, okay, because we can't wait for 1 year, which it usually takes the FDA to approve a new drug, let's give emergency authorization. They authorize it, and then the next step, it goes to the CDC. There's another body that will look at the data again before the CDC will recommend it finally. So these are all the steps that this process goes to before they can say, okay, let's give it to everybody, let's authorize it for all of us to start taking it. The question a lot of people ask is, if it usually goes through this step, how come we were able to get the vaccine done within a very short period of time? 3 factors. One is that we're in a pandemic, a lot of people are dying, they needed to move fast. So they combined some of those phases, they were doing it simultaneously. The Pfizer were doing phase 2 and phase 3 simultaneously. Ordinarily, those things will have been done step after one another, but at this point, they can do them simultaneously and look at the data. And then the other factor that made it to move that fast was because there were a lot of cases at the time. of cases of COVID. So it is easy for us to quickly see whether the vaccine works or not, because there were a lot of people that were infected. So you can quickly see whether it's protective or it's not protective. And then finally, the government was also wanted this to get out fast. So they were able to sponsor the whole process, make sure that everything is intact, all the usual red tape that is involved in approving vaccine or in approving new drugs. They will kind of make sure that all those red tape were taken care of. And then the government also assured the pharmaceutical company that they were going to buy those things. So the pharmaceutical company started making the vaccine even before they got the final results. So they were already committed to that process. So that's why it took a shorter period of time relative to what it usually does. In terms of safety, what are the side effects that you get with the vaccine? It is extremely safe, extremely safe. Most of the people that have gotten the vaccine will notice that they get some pain around the injection site immediately usually after the first dose. After the second dose, you may get some fever, some body ache, but most of these symptoms usually go away within a day. So it is very, very safe. Once you get the vaccine, the other things you are also concerned about is, are there any serious side effects? So for the Pfizer and the Moderna, which are the mRNA vaccine, and I'll talk about what mRNA are, no serious side effects, no significant serious side effects have been noticed in most people. One of the things that have been reported is you have this severe allergic reaction. Just like some people will have with penicillin. Some people, when they get penicillin, they may have allergic reaction. So any other medication can cause allergic reaction. So some people can develop allergic reaction to the vaccine. And that is why when you go and get your vaccine, they will tell you, wait for 15 minutes to 20 minutes, and we'll check you and make sure that you don't develop that. The other big adverse effect or side effect you may see with the vaccine is the one that was recently reported with the Johnson & Johnson vaccine, and that is the blood clots. It is very rare, 7 in 1 million people. As in, that is how rare it is. As in, if you take 1 million people, only 7 out of them may get it. And those 7 are even specific. As in, it's usually female less than 50, between 18 and 50 or thereabouts. Once you are above 50, female above 50, it's even rarer in them. Male, it is even much, much rarer in male. So those are the 2 main serious adverse effects with the vaccines that have been approved in the US. I've mentioned all the minor adverse effects that we usually will see. Those are very simple things: pain around the site, some fever, some malaise, you feel sick just for 1 day, and that's it. In terms of our effect, one more thing about safety is concerned about mRNA. What is mRNA? So for those of us that did some science in college or in high school, there's something called DNA, there's RNA, and then there's protein. Those are the 3 things that make most of our tissue. The DNA is the genetic component, it's in the nucleus. The RNA usually is made from the DNA, and then the protein is made from the RNA. So what the mRNA is the step between the DNA and the protein. So they inject the mRNA into your system. Number 1 is that it doesn't get into your nucleus where the DNA is. So it is not going to alter your DNA at all. It gets into your body. The immune cells, the cells that produce antibodies, they will take it up, and then they will process it. They will process it into protein, and that's it. The RNA goes away. It cannot survive longer than that. Once it's just like putting, it's just you're giving some instruction to the cell to make a protein, and the cells make that protein, and that's it. The protein is seen by the body, and the body develops antibodies and immune response so that it will protect you from getting the real virus. So the mRNA will never integrate into your system. it won't usually last in your system more than probably 24 to 48 hours, even if it lasts that long. So it's not something that will alter your gene or affect your offspring or affect pregnant women at all. So that's about mRNA. And the other vaccine, the Johnson & Johnson vaccine, is made from a virus that usually causes common cold. They've modified this virus that it cannot replicate. It cannot form new virus. All it does is that it goes into your system, it supplies the protein, or it supplies instructions to make the protein. That's the protein from the virus, and then the body develops immune response to it. Again, it will not integrate into your DNA, it will not alter your genetic makeup. In terms of effectiveness, these vaccines are very effective. If you take one dose, it's almost about 50% effective, protecting you from getting the virus. And by the time you take the second dose, the studies have been extremely clear, almost 90%, more than 90% for the mRNA vaccine, and against you getting the severe infection, and also against you becoming hospitalized or dying from the virus. So they are very, very effective in protecting you from getting severely sick from the virus infection. The question a lot of people had initially was, does it prevent you from even getting the virus at all, or does it prevent you from even transmitting the virus? And there was a study that was published, I think last month, from the CDC that showed that the virus, the vaccine itself also, to some extent, even prevents you from getting infected at all, and also to prevent you from infecting others. So that's about the effectiveness. And okay, the question is, we've seen, all these studies are done in controlled settings. We don't know whether they cooked up the data and all that stuff. In real time, as in they've also done studies in real time, as after this vaccine they started giving the vaccine to everybody. They've looked at health workers in countries, Qatar, Israel, UK, US. They've looked at real people that have gotten it, not company-sponsored studies. And they've also seen that it is very, very protective in those populations. I guess the last part I just wanted to even mention is about pregnant women. Can pregnant women take it? Pregnant women can, there are some studies that were published this week, and I think about 2 weeks ago, that shows that it is also safe in pregnant women. They can also take it. So overall, I think the message is clear. These vaccines are safe, they are effective, they protect you from getting the virus, they protect you from becoming sick, and they protect you from getting hospitalized. May Allah protect all of us.
Finally, Dr. Muhammad is going to address the issue about the false information that's been circulating about the virus in the social media.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله. A couple of things about the false information. I mean, there's plenty of it outside, and you just have to be careful where you're getting your news. There's a big anti-vaxxer movement in the United States going on for decades. I mean, probably before even most of us came. These are the people who now have a new platform trying to scare people with the wrong information about the vaccine. One of the things is, as Dr. Hasim already talked about, the general myths, or misconceptions or misinformation which is out there for the vaccine, like the vaccine will give me COVID. The way he was explaining the mRNA part of it, it doesn't do it. It cannot do it. And you're not going to get COVID-19 from COVID vaccine. inshallah. So, it's a very safe vaccine. I mean, I can say it all day long. Most of us in medical field, we got our vaccines in December. My 85-year-old mother got it. My 23-year-old daughter got it. We all have it, and alhamdulillah, except for some minor side effects, you don't feel anything. The vaccine is made to create an immune response in your body. So you may get a fever, you may get body aches, you may get nausea, you may get chills. That's the extent of it. Most of these things are, this is the most politicized disease and the vaccine in the history of the United States. The United States itself has not seen an economic meltdown like this since World War II. So this is a huge deal. And unfortunately, if you look at the map of the United States, except for Hawaii and another state, most of the states have people have only received 32% of the people to 36% of the people. Missouri, as of today, is only 32% of the people are vaccinated, and the vaccine centers are open and empty. People are not going because they have all these misconceptions that the vaccine is going to change my DNA. Remember, the messenger RNA doesn't go backwards. So it's not going to rewrite your DNA. Bill Gates once said early on in the pandemic about digital information, and people started saying, especially the anti-vaxxers started spreading the news that they're going to put a chip in your body. And many of my patients always say, they're trying to put a chip in my body. I said, United States government is so sophisticated, if they want to put a chip in you, you already have it. So don't worry about it. And, people have worries. People say, I don't like needles. I don't want something to poke me. I said, well, if you get COVID, you'll be poked 1,000 times. Both Brother Qasim and me at St. Luke's, we've seen in the heights of pandemic, people dying, and we can't help them. We can only help them to so much extent. So this is a deadly disease. And, I would not hesitate, like if I propose, like my family got the vaccine, I can say that for anybody. I would take it again without hesitation when the booster shots come. So at this point, I will let people ask if there are any questions. There's a question that first came to me that somebody asked a question, and I think there are a couple of same questions, that this brother asked a question that they got COVID-19, and they were told by someone, I guess their physician, that the antibodies are going to last for 3 to 6 months, and they're asking how different it is and whether they can take their mask off. We can talk about the masks all day long. The answer to his question is, yes, when you get COVID-19, you will have positive antibodies, but the studies have shown these antibodies only last for 3 months to 4 months at the most. And the vaccine studies show that the antibodies that are given via vaccine that your body produces can last close to a year, 10 months. Now remember, antibody response from an infection is very different than an antibody response from a vaccine. So you cannot rely, it matters. You cannot judge by just getting the antibodies at Walgreens and saying, oh, I have antibodies. Doesn't mean anything. You can have one antibody, it'll show up. You can have 1 million or 1 billion antibodies, it's going to be the same test. So you cannot rely on COVID-19 infection. Actually, if somebody has COVID-19 infection, they should get the vaccine within 90 days. If they have received monoclonal antibody treatment for COVID-19, they have to wait 90 days. And the other thing is, this brother's question was about the masks. The recent recommendation by CDC has blown off the medical community by saying that, if you had vaccine, you can go out without the mask. You have to take that statement very carefully. For example, our hospital is on full alert. So no matter what CDC says, we'll have to follow the protocol that's necessary. Just because you had the vaccine and if you go out without a mask, you don't know the person next to you got the vaccine or not. They can transmit the virus to you. You may not get infected, most likely, but you can carry it to somebody who does not have had vaccine, and you can give it to somebody, especially older people or people who are immunocompromised. So be careful of the mask. And one other thing I'm going to tell you, people look at social media or CDC and this and that. They say, oh, stay away 6 feet, 3 feet, 8 feet. These are arbitrary numbers. Nobody checks, you know, the studies they based these distances, they're just based on previous studies. You have to take care as much as possible. So taking the mask off, you know, if you're in the masjid, let's say, for example, well, not the masjid, because we have the different rules here. If you're at home and you invite some people at home, you have to be sure that they got the vaccine before you take the mask off. I just came from a brother's retirement party, and we all work in the same hospital, so we all are vaccinated. Some people still have the mask on because they were being very careful, and there's nothing wrong with that. So that's the answer to that question. The other question is, I'll answer one more question, and then I'll give it to Brother Qasim to answer the other question. I have, the brother asked, I have both the Pfizer shots, alhamdulillah, how immunized I am from other variants if I'm to visit UK or Indian subcontinent, jazakallah khair. So be very careful with this. Most of the experts think, now remember, they're thinking on the anecdotal data, that these vaccines will prevent you from provide some protection against the variant. I know of 2 Indian doctors, and one, Abu Sohaib's son, Sohaib told me he knew a doctor in Charleston who was vaccinated here. Just like us, he was seeing COVID patients daily. He went to India. Despite being fully vaccinated, he got the virus and he died. And there's another infectious disease Hindu doctor who went to India and he passed away, same situation. So yes, you know, if the travel restrictions are dependent on the countries, if you go there, you have to be very careful. Even if somebody gives me $1 million, I'm not going to go to India at this point. So I mean, you have to use the right judgment. And, you know, Prophet ﷺ says, you know, we know the hadith very well. If there is a waba, if there's a plague going on somewhere, don't leave the town and don't enter the town. I mean, it's simple enough. And I think be very careful about getting the mask out, depending on what CDC is saying. If you're vaccinated, you can take your mask off. Well, then I asked them to give us guarantee that all these people who are not vaccinated, are they going to keep their mask on? Now, we have seen over the last year, the beaches, the bars, the restaurants, this is how it spread. And it will continue to spread. COVID is not over. It's not going to go away at any time soon. So for the brother who asked, they got the Pfizer shots, are they okay to visit UK and India? I think use your best judgment. I would not go to India. UK virus is somewhat protected. I mean, a person is protected against the UK virus, but the Indian versions of the viruses are not completely protected because of the examples, just the 2 examples I gave you. And their disease is spreading faster than anywhere else in the world, so I would stay away from there. Jazakallah khair. Ask another question.
Okay, yeah. A question here says, is it true that if I take the vaccine, I should wait at least 2 years to have a child, or my child will be born sick with disability? This is totally not true. Like I said, you don't need to wait 2 years, and we have evidence now for this. That's number 1. The vaccine you're getting, the mRNA vaccine, it gets into your body, it doesn't integrate into your DNA. A protein is made, your body clears everything pretty fast. It doesn't affect it. You won't see it in your urine, you won't see it in your sperm, you won't see it in any other tissue in your body. So that's one. So it will, and that means you cannot transmit it to your kid, and it cannot affect your child. There is also studies now that have been published. There was a study that was actually just published yesterday from Harvard, where they had a couple of pregnant women that got the vaccine, and none of them had abnormality, as in some of them have given birth. It didn't affect their pregnancy at all, and it didn't affect the baby that were born from those pregnancy. There was also another study where they looked at people that were vaccinated and registered themselves on the vSafe. I don't know, some of you must have used that vSafe app when you got your vaccine. And about close to 30,000 pregnant women were also involved in that study or thereabout. And all of them, there was no abnormality that was detected among the pregnant women, or among some of the baby that were born by those pregnant women. So the vaccine is safe. It's not going to affect your child, or and you don't need to wait for 2 years. That's about that. Okay. Vaccines are made by taking disease matter from sick people, which is then cultured through various mediums, which include monkeys, kidney tissue, chicken embryos, and dissected organs. So I think dissected organs of human aborted fetuses, pig pancreatic hydrolysates of caseins. What is your take on this? Harmful proteins and residual can lead to tumor and have other harmful outcomes, and this is why vaccine inserts always states that the vaccine has not been tested for tumorigenic or cancer. So number one is that these vaccines, apart from the mRNA, which is pretty relatively new, but I will say something about that. The other vaccines that we've been taking all along, and the Johnson & Johnson vaccine, which is based on a code virus, those vaccines have been in circulation for a very long time. They've been testing these adenoviruses for a long time. There has been no report of it causing any tumor or causing, in fact, we actually use it to treat tumor. So that's the other thing. We actually use this virus, as in there are studies that are being done now where we are trying to, researchers are trying to see if they can use some of these adenovirus to treat tumor. So there's something called oncolytic virus, where you can modify the virus and it can actually treat tumor. So it is definitely, I'm certain about that at least as far as Allah Alam, that we know that this virus will not cause tumor. In terms of the mRNA vaccine itself, the same thing. There are actually studies, they've used these mRNA vaccines in studies for Zika virus, for flu virus, as well as for other viruses as well, and it's safe. Again, they are also trying to use this mRNA vaccine to treat tumor. In terms of the processes that goes into developing these viruses, these vaccines, it's the same process that goes into developing your Tylenol. It's the same process that goes into developing some of the other drugs that you've been taking since you were a baby and you never had any issue with them. That's the reality. I tell some people, if you don't trust this vaccine, then you probably should not trust any medication you take at all, because the process that goes into development are pretty much the same. And in terms of whether they use pig or fetuses or so some of they use some cells in the process of developing this virus, and I think the scholars can talk about those what the Islamic principle on those processes. But those cells are usually cells that are most of them are derived from human cells, and the goal of those cells is just to process, to expand the viruses. It doesn't go beyond that. it doesn't affect the output at the end of the day. And I don't think they are definitely not tumorigenic, and they are not harmful in terms of what they will cause. I think maybe you may be able to add.
Just to say clearly that COVID vaccines do not have fetal material or any
Yes, and the mRNA itself does not have any fetal material or pig or it's mRNA you made. This is just it's chemical. That's basically it. It's like any chemical you use to make, as they used to make any of the other medications you've been taking. So those mRNA are pretty much chemicals that are made in the lab, and they are not made from fetuses. They are not made from pig or pancreatic hydrolysates that is mentioned in these statements.
Another question here, if the vaccine does not protect 100%, why do we need to take it? SubhanAllah, we are, in this world. We know that nothing is 100% in this world. It's going to be only in Jannah. So Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam also used double shield when he went to the war. And he was not even protected 100% by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala did not guarantee him that he's going to be 100% protected. He got injured in the battle, we know that. So, subhanAllah, we cannot achieve that 100% in this world. This is not possible. So, we are getting almost like 95% protection. I think that should be good enough. Any scientific study, if you do, and if you achieve more than 70% or 80%, that is a success. So we need to rely on that, and definitely we need to rely on Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The protection comes from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and that's why we should ask for the 100% from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala only. The last question, actually, probably another one more question.
It's a follow-up question on what I mentioned about somebody going to India and dying. So somebody has a question here. They're saying that if somebody had the vaccine and they went to India or wherever, if they died, what's the point of getting the vaccine if the virus can mutate? Well, I mean, it's a valid question. I mean, just to give you a little background, the influenza virus still kills about 50,000 people or so in the United States and millions in the world. And influenza virus it mutates faster than the coronavirus is mutating. So yes, the virus is going to be mutating. So the point of getting the vaccine is that currently there's no other choice. Either a person gets COVID or COVID vaccine, depending on what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala decides for that person. Number two, even if the person who gets the vaccine gets the COVID, if they are protecting themselves by not traveling here and there where they should not in the pandemic, then they should be much safer. Is the vaccine going to get better? Yes, most likely, because in the past when the new strains of the vaccine, influenza came along, we were not covering those in influenza vaccine. Now we cover the worst form of influenza. So this is a new disease. It's important to get the vaccine because I'm telling you, I mean, you can ask the other people that you know and you can ask Brother Qasim, it's a very bad disease. I've seen sick patients, I have several patients of mine who died, and it's not a simple thing. And the vaccine is much safer than the COVID, I can tell you. So if somebody is worried about getting the vaccine, they should really think about the COVID. So may Allah give us the right guidance, inshallah.
We're ending, but this statement of Dr. Ahmed is like if we are worried about the vaccine, how if we see the real disease, what it's doing to people? So which one is higher harm for a person? And then the last question here, how can we ensure that everyone is vaccinated here in order to reduce spaces and masks and so on? We cannot. unfortunately. So we are keeping all these as is until, like it's an honor statement that everyone will say, yes, we took it in order for us to be able to reduce. Because we still, some brothers is worried and they don't want, and many reasons. So we will keep as is all these measure that we are taking. Jazakumullah khairan. Sorry to keep you longer, but this is for the benefit, this is for saving our life and the life of other. Jazakumullah khairan. Wa sallallahu ala Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa sallam.